In a timeline where Dale Earnhardt never lost his life in the 2001 Daytona 500, the year is 2015. After years of domination from DEI, the rise of stars like David Stremme, and many changes in the sport, a rift occurred in the way of a boycott. Dale Earnhardt had enough of the way NASCAR was becoming under Brian France. He, DEI, and about half the teams in NASCAR went on a strike, and this heavily affected NASCAR throughout 2015. Many of those stars did not race in the Sprint Cup Series that year. Some instead ran in other racing sanctions from ARCA, and even some went to dirt and other sanctions. In Griffdog's timeline, changes were made from the demands of those who boycotted. NASCAR returned to normal in 2016. But what if things ended differently? Early on in the 2015 season, Brian France made a statement doubling down on the recent changes. He believed that this was the way of the future for NASCAR. More so, he added salt to the wound by saying that NASCAR wanted to go in a different direction to reaching new audiences. France made the case that NASCAR is changing and change has to happen. Now, the biggest thing was Dale Earnhardt didn't mind NASCAR trying different things, but he felt like with the direction NASCAR was heading in, nothing was really working, citing that NASCAR has been on a decline in popularity in the past several years. A lot of fans stopped showing up to races and attendance dwindled. Viewership plummeted as well. NASCAR even decided to take drastic measures on their schedule for 2016, and we'll get to that shortly. Suddenly in the summer of 2015, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was seen testing at Michigan with what looked like to be a modern-looking Gen 4 race car. But then it was announced in September that a group led by Dale Earnhardt, Joe Gibbs, and others were going to purchase ARCA, and a lot of the teams on strike would make the move over to ARCA, running updated versions of the Gen 4 car with 2013 models. And yes, better brakes too. This was a huge surprise. Even though NASCAR wasn't as big as it was in the 1990s and early 2000s, and while it wasn't a massive buzz in the general sports world, small markets that had ARCA tracks would gain hype over the stars that were going to come over. Many began to compare this to the CART IndyCar split. Dale Earnhardt spoke out and said that this is not what he wanted to have happen, but he also wanted to see more of pure racing without gimmicks. Not to mention for guys like him, Joe Gibbs, Jack Roush, Richard Petty, among the other teams that boycotted, they had a business to run and they wanted to get back on the racetrack as soon as possible. The new ARCA, under President Joe Gibbs, would also give a slight increase to race lengths and do a traditional 2003 points format. This would all begin in 2016. As for NASCAR, they began to take drastic measures with the 2016 schedule. They took off the spring Bristol race, the spring Martinsville race, and the most shocking of them all, Darlington. They added Gateway, Circuit of the Americas, and Nashville Superspeedway. They also introduced the Charlotte Roval a couple years earlier than our timeline. So as I show both schedules for the NASCAR Sprint Cup and ARCA Menards Series, yes, Menards becomes the title sponsor a little earlier here as well. The tracks on NASCAR's side, Spring Bristol, Spring Martinsville, and Darlington, were all dropped because they were away from some of the desirable markets that NASCAR wanted to get into, in which here they get St. Louis, Austin, Texas, and the big one, Nashville. Meanwhile, ARCA still believed that those tracks like Bristol, Martinsville, and Darlington were a necessity. Jeffrey Earnhardt, who was in the ARCA press conference, believed those tracks are what made the uniqueness of motorsports. The Southern 500 in particular will be ARCA's big crown jewel and will be the longest race on the schedule. NASCAR is still working hard more than ever before to gain new exposure and will be in a rebounding phase despite ARCA taking a lot of their core base. With the ARCA schedule, a lot of tracks welcomed ARCA to have an additional weekend that kept away from NASCAR dates because they felt like it could generate more revenue. When you think about it, ARCA is going to have guys like Matt Kenseth, Kyle Busch, Ryan Newman, and Dale Earnhardt Jr., in which those are names that will make people come to the track. For ARCA, they decided to get an early head start. They will begin the season at Daytona in January, before the Rolex 24. ARCA's unique vision also made it a little more difficult to set up their new TV deal, which leads to a lot of races being on Fox Sports 1. However, they were able to get CBS Media to buy into their vision by experimenting with sports on the CW, also with premier events like Daytona and the Southern 500 on CBS. As a side note, the ARCA Lincoln Welders Truck Series also does not fold after 2016, now that the circuit has a larger field size and schedule. Many believe that ARCA was catering to the Southern fans. Both Earnhardt and Gibbs stated that this is more about pure racing, no gimmicks, no forced drama, just flat out racing. The stock car racing world has changed forever, and now both NASCAR and ARCA face tough challenges ahead. Many questions have yet to be answered. Many veteran racers have gotten older. So the next question also is, who will lead both circuits into the future? Welcome to a divided ending. Now, while this video will cover 2016, and I do plan on covering future years in future videos, we'll start things off in January 2016 with the ARCA Lucas Oil 350 at Daytona. So we'll start with the ARCA series first, and then, or I should say the ARCA Menard series, and then we'll go over to NASCAR. A decent turnout here at Daytona for what looks like to be a new era of stock car auto racing, especially for ARCA. Without further ado, let's meet the drivers for the 2016 ARCA Menard Series with the starting lineup here at Daytona. Starting on the pole is a shocker. Tommy Joe Martins takes his family operation over to ARCA, and he qualifies for the pole here at Daytona. His team is seeking additional sponsorship. Starting second is Brad Keselowski. So Roger Penske decided to take the neutral route. He's going to go divide and conquer. While he's going to help build ARCA, he is still loyal to NASCAR. With that being said, Brad Keselowski will race in ARCA while Joey Logano continues to race in NASCAR. Starting third is Kyle Busch. This is his own team, Kyle Busch Motorsports. So what happened was, when Joe Gibbs became part of this new ARCA project, he became the president of ARCA. He decided to sell off his assets to Kyle Busch and Venturini Motorsports. So Kyle Busch will have a 2-car entry for 2016, and Venturini will have a 3-car program as well. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Starting in fourth is Austin Dillon. He now takes over the number 3 for Richard Childress Racing as they move over to ARCA. Then starting in fifth is Clint Bowyer. So with Roush Fenway Racing, there was essentially a split inside the split. Jack Roush was very interested in running in ARCA, but Fenway Sports Group had other plans. So Fenway splits away from Roush Fenway Racing. So now the team is once again Roush Racing. They will have a 3-car program, while Fenway will have a 2-car program in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. And I will show you that later. Starting sixth is Austin Wayne Self. This is his family operation, as he has been running in ARCA before the split. And starting seventh is the second KBM entry of Eric Jones in the number 54. Starting eighth is one of the DEI cars. Jamie McMurray continues to race for them in the number 1. And starting ninth is a Venturini Toyota. This is Brandon Jones, as he was signed on, bringing over good sponsorship money, and he'll be one of the 3 cars that you'll see here today. Starting in 10th will be Brian Scott in the second Richard Petty Motorsports Dodge, and starting 11th is Ryan Blaney. He moves over to ARCA with the Wood brothers, and that's where he'll be racing. Starting in 12th is Matt Kenseth. He's still in the number 20 car, but it's with Venturini. Dollar General also follows him over. Starting in 13th is Ryan Newman in the 31, and next to him is Daniel Suarez. He is in the 3rd Venturini car. Eris also follows him over. Starting in 15th, you can already tell he's an ARCA fan favorite. It's Dale Earnhardt Jr. He has a new sponsor with Nationwide, and he continues to drive the number 8 for DEI. Starting 16th is Eric Amarola in the Petty 43. Starting 17th is the GMS Racing entry, Grant Enfinger, who won the 2015 ARCA Championship. He and GMS decide to stick with ARCA, and they want to compete with the big boys. Another driver who's sticking with ARCA starts in 18th. That is Josh Williams. That is also his own operation in the number 92 Chevrolet. Rolling off 19th is Brian Vickers for Michael Waltrip Racing. And starting 20th for Roush Racing is Chris Buescher in the number 6 car. David Stremme does not go over to ARCA. He sticks with NASCAR, and again, we'll get to that later. Starting 21st is Ty Dillon with Richard Childress Racing. Starting 22nd is Mike Harmon in the 74. Rolling off 23rd is one of the Front Row Motorsports Fords of JJ Yeley. He'll drive the 34th. And starting 24th is Will Kimmel in the number 69. Starting 25th is David Gilliland. He's in the number 38 for Front Row. And then Con Nikolopoulos in the 06 for Wayne Peterson. Here is Michael Waltrip's second entry for ARCA, starting in 27th, and that's Kyle Weatherman in the number 15. Rolling off 28th is Bobby Gerhardt, obviously a well-known name in ARCA. He'll be running the Super Speedway races. And here is the third DEI entry rolling off 29th. Jeffrey Earnhardt in the number 81. Starting in 30th is Greg Biffle. He's going to give this ARCA thing a shot. And then starting 31st is a part-time driver in Bo LeMastus for Crosley Sports Group. Rolling off 32nd is Paige Decker. So this car is formed by the Decker family, and she and Claire Decker will split this car with a start from Natalie at the end of the season. And then rounding out the field in the number 48 for James Hilton is Brad Smith, making it a total of 33 cars in this race. Tommy Joe Martins and Brad Keselowski lead the field of 33 cars to the green flag here at Daytona as a new era begins in ARCA. By lap 2, as Tommy Joe Martins led lap 1, Kyle Busch takes the lead right after. And I also want to make a side note, I did condense the races here. You can pretend that the races are at full length if you want to. Lap 6, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Brandon Jones make it 3 wide for the lead as Jones gets credit for a lap led, but Dale Jr. would take the lead right after. Then 1 lap later, Daniel Suarez has the lead, but he ends up getting challenged by the 6 of Chris Buescher, who would then take the lead. Then on lap 9, the lead goes back to Daniel Suarez. Suarez would continue to lead for a bit until lap 20, when Matt Kenseth took the lead in his new Venturini Toyota. He leads for a bit, and then on lap 28, Brian Scott challenges Matt Kenseth for the lead as they battle side by side. This battle continued on for the next handful of laps as Matt Kenseth had the upper hand. Then on lap 33, Brian Scott finally got around him, but Jamie McMurray, the 2012 Daytona 500 winner, comes knocking on his door, and he takes the lead. Ty Dillon, however, would take the lead coming back around. Then on lap 34, Brandon Jones takes the lead back as the Venturini boys have strong cars today. Coming back around, Aric Almirola was the first to begin a cycle of green flag pit stops as the race had ran clean all day long. Lap 41, after green flag pit stops, the field would spread out to where the top 3 cars were in a pack by themselves, consisting of Aric Almirola, Brian Vickers, and Josh Williams. Lap 44, Brian Vickers takes the lead from Almirola, but it wouldn't take long for Almirola to take it back. With 11 laps to go, Josh Williams gets help from Brian Vickers to take the lead as he's looking to stun the rest of the field. Then just a couple laps later, Brian Vickers would then take the lead back. And then coming back around, Aric Almirola regains the lead in the Petty 43. 2 laps to go, Josh Williams takes the lead back as he tries to hold out Vickers and Almirola, and on the final lap, Aric Almirola sets up for the perfect move and goes to the inside of Williams. Brian Vickers moves to second, but he will run out of time as Aric Almirola will win the ARCA Lucas Oil 350 at Daytona in the Petty 43. Here's a top 10 for the 2016 race here at Daytona. Eric Almirola is your winner. Brian Vickers is in second. Josh Williams third. Brian Scott fourth, so a good day for Richard Petty's team. Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished fifth. Jamie McMurray in sixth. Brandon Jones seventh. Matt Kenseth eighth. Ty Dillon ninth. And Bobby Gerhardt rounds out the top 10. With that being said, let's go into the highlights for the 2016 ARCA season. The very next race after Daytona, Jeffrey Earnhardt and Brad Keselowski went neck and neck the entire race, in which Earnhardt would edge out Keselowski to win the second race of the season at Homestead. In an absolute shocking turn of events at Talladega, it just happened that Kahne was in the right place at the right time after a round of green flag pit stops, and he was able to push his 06 machine to the checkered flag for probably one of the biggest upsets in racing history, as Kahne got the win at Talladega for Wayne Peterson. DEI was surely a dominant team as they picked up 7 wins in the 2016 ARCA season. Jeffrey Earnhardt went on a tear, winning 4 races that included the previously mentioned Homestead race, Rockingham, Kansas, and Illinois. Jamie McMurray got his 2 wins at Kentucky and Martinsville, so he won a jukebox and a grandfather clock. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. picked up his lone win of the season at Pocono. On the final lap, it seemed Jamie McMurray was about to lock up the win at Michigan until Austin Dillon had a huge run coming off of turn 4, and he was just able to barely beat Jamie McMurray by inches to win and get his first win of the season at Michigan. Brian Vickers was another dominant driver all season long. He also, like Jeffrey Earnhardt, picked up 4 wins on the season, winning at the first Salem race, and then scoring back-to-back wins at Chicagoland and Winchester, and then finally picking up his 4th win at Knoxville. The Southern 500 became the biggest crown jewel race on the ARCA schedule, and with it brought along a lot of interesting one-offs, such as Townsend Bell, who's driving a one-off in a second GMS car. Paul Menard makes a surprising return in a 4th Venturini Toyota. Then you got a second Penske Dodge driven by Rio Harriento. Now this guy was actually driving Formula 1 early in the season until he ran out of funding and lost his ride. He says that if things go well, he may try a little bit more of ARCA down the road. Carl Long is making an entry for his own team in the number 13. Bobby Earnhardt is driving a 4th DEI car. He is a driver in the ARCA Truck Series. Colin Braun in a 3rd Front Row Motorsports Ford. Paul Tracy making a surprising appearance in a one-off for Richard Childress Racing. And lastly, Brian Keselowski, the brother to Brad Keselowski, and he is driving a car that Brad had prepped for him to run in this race and a few others throughout the season. And then, of course, you got Bobby Gerhardt also starting in this race. It was a fun, competitive race throughout, but one guy in particular dominated the race, and it was somebody that no one really would expect to win the race. The winner of the Southern 500 was Townsend Bell, driving for GMS Racing, which surprised a lot of people, but also ARCA met with a lot of criticism after this race. Many started to question the true talent in the ARCA Menard series and believed that perhaps some of these drivers were just a joke. On the other hand, with Townsend Bell's victory, this could potentially increase more interest from open-wheel drivers to potentially try out ARCA at some point down the line. Coming down to the wire at the season finale at Bristol, the championship came down between Jeffrey Earnhardt and Brad Keselowski. A late caution shuffled everything as Jeffrey Earnhardt was in position to secure the championship. But thanks to that late caution, he was shuffled to 17th, and Brad Keselowski would go on to not only win that race, but also secure the championship, and he would beat Jeffrey Earnhardt in the standings by just 19 points in what was an amazing championship battle to kick off the new ARCA. A big congratulations to Brad Keselowski, who's now a NASCAR and ARCA champion. And lastly, here's a look at the top 10 in standings and a list of all the winners from the 2016 ARCA Menard season. That takes care of ARCA, and now we shift over to the 2016 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series season, where we will kick off just like we did with ARCA with the 2016 Daytona 500. Some things to think about heading into the 2016 season. Obviously, this is the final season for Jeff Gordon, as he'll retire at the end of the season and Chase Elliott will take over. The other thing is, of course, the car count is not as big as in previous years for the second year in a row. So with that being said, let's take a look at the starting lineup for the 2016 Daytona 500. Starting on the pole is Matt DiBenedetto in the number 83 for what was formerly BK Racing. The team is now called Divine Hamlin TRD. And basically what happened was that Denny Hamlin was more interested in staying with NASCAR. With that being said, he teams up with Toyota and Ron Devine to form this new team that was formed out of what was formerly BK Racing. So this will be a 3-car program, and you'll see who else is driving for this team here in just a few moments. And starting next to him, as we just mentioned, is Jeff Gordon in what will be his final Daytona 500. Once again, he'll retire at the end of the season. Starting third is Kevin Harvick in the number 4. Anheuser-Busch switches over branding from Budweiser to Busch. And starting fourth is Michael McDowell, as the Levine Family Racing switches over to Chevrolet. Starting fifth is Regan Smith, driving for Tommy Baldwin Racing. And starting sixth is Martin Truex Jr. with Furniture Row Racing. Starting seventh, and I talked about this earlier, Trevor Bayne in the number 21 for Fenway Motorsports. So after Fenway split away from Roush, they decided to form a 2-car Cup Series team. Trevor Bayne is one of those drivers. And then starting 8th is David Stremme. So he comes back over to NASCAR and he replaces Jeremy Mayfield after he retired last season. Stremme now drives the number 88 Ford. Starting 9th is Ryan Truex in the 41, and starting 10th is another Divine Hamlin TRD Toyota, and that's David Reagan in the number 23. Starting 11th is AJ Allmendinger in the number 47, and then here's Denny Hamlin in the number 12. Same number, same sponsor, but with a little bit of a different look, as he is now a driver and co-owner of Divine Hamlin TRD. Starting 13th is Michael Annett in the 46 for Johnny Davis, and starting 14th is Tony Stewart, who has given himself a 3-year extension to continue racing in the Cup Series. Starting 15th is Dakota Armstrong. He is a 3rd car for HScott Motorsports, and he will run for Rookie of the Year. Joey Logano will roll off in 16th. Once again, I mentioned the Penske split earlier. Then starting 17th is defending champion Jimmie Johnson. Kurt Busch is back in the 28th for Robert Yates Racing. He'll start in 18th. And starting 19th is a 4th Stewart-Haas Racing car for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So as you saw, Clint Boyer was in the 17 for Roush Racing over in ARCA. Stenhouse does come over with Chevrolet Accessories as a sponsor for Stewart-Haas Racing. Starting 20th is the 0 of Brett Moffitt. He is also going to be a rookie this season, and this is a 2nd car for Johnny Davis, being teammates with Michael Annett. Starting 21st is Landon Cassill in the 2500 Motorsports, and starting 22nd is a new team, and this is one of the 2 cars that they will field for 2016. This is Rick Ware Racing. Jeb Burton will be piloting the number 54 Jacob Company's Ford. In 23rd, you'll find Bubba Wallace. This is the 2nd Fenway Motorsports car in the number 19 with Citgo as a sponsor. Citgo returns to NASCAR. Starting 24th is Carl Edwards. He's back in the 52 for HScott, and Kasey Kahne starts 25th. Justin Allgaier will start 26th in the 51, and starting 27th is Bobby Labonte, and this will also be his final full-time season. He's in the number 32. Getting near the end of the field, you'll find both Chip Ganassi cars. Here's the 40 of Alex Bowman. This is his first season with the team, and Kyle Larson will start in 29th. Starting 30th is Casey Mears in the 13, and here's Elliott Sadler in the 2nd Rick Ware Racing Ford. He'll start 31st. And rounding out the field is Cole Whitt in the 98 for Premium Motorsports, and Josh Wise in the number 30 for the Motorsports Group. Matt DiBenedetto and Jeff Gordon are on the front row, and we are set and ready to go. Green flag at the 2016 Daytona 500. Kevin Harvick takes the lead down the backstretch and leads coming back around. Lap 2, Trevor Bayne takes the lead going 3 wide on Kevin Harvick and Regan Smith. Then by lap 4, Ryan Truex takes the lead, and for the next few laps, he and Trevor Bayne remain side by side for the lead. Lap 13, Ryan Truex slides up the track, paving the way for AJ Allmendinger as he takes the lead with a push from Dakota Armstrong. But then coming back around, the rookie Armstrong takes the lead. Lap 15, the lead continues to change as Jimmie Johnson takes the lead this time. But then Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and his new ride at Stewart-Haas Racing takes the lead from the defending champion. Lap 16, Bubba Wallace from Fenway Motorsports now takes the lead. And then lap 18, here comes Bobby Labonte from out of nowhere as he is looking to win the Daytona 500 in what will be his final attempt at it. Allgaier and Kasey Kahne hang on as they duel for the lead. Then on lap 23, Justin Allgaier clears the way for the lead. And then it's back to him versus Kasey Kahne by lap 25. Lap 27, Kasey Kahne now leads and Bobby Labonte is still in contention, trying to create a feel-good story. Lap 29, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Alex Bowman now enter the mix and contend for the lead. Lap 30, Jeb Burton and Michael Annett come down pit road, opening green flag pit stops. Meanwhile, Brett Moffitt takes the lead. Lap 32, over the next few laps, everyone began making green flag pit stops. Lap 36, after green flag pit stops, Tony Stewart now has the lead as he tries to lap Trevor Bayne. Then 1 lap later, Denny Hamlin took the lead trying to win for his new team. The front pack now involves just Hamlin, Annett, Allmendinger, Stewart, and Casey Mears. But then on lap 50, the automatic 20 to go caution comes out. This is still something that NASCAR still uses. AJ Allmendinger led the field to the caution. Everyone makes their final pit stops and adjustments during the caution to help them win the Great American Race, and Jeff Gordon was the first one off pit road. Lap 54 on the restart, Jeff Gordon leads the field to the restart with Denny Hamlin second, Casey Mears third, Kasey Kahne fourth, and Tony Stewart in fifth. 15 laps to go, Tony Stewart is up to second as now the two superstars of NASCAR run 1-2. Then Tony Stewart takes the lead from Jeff Gordon. Then with 11 to go, Tony Stewart is still leading, but Jeff Gordon has fought his way back up to second. 2 to go, Tony Stewart still leads, but Jeff Gordon is right there. David Reagan is third, and coming down the backstretch, Reagan goes to Gordon's inside, but it doesn't work. And then on the final lap, Jeff Gordon looked to Tony Stewart's inside, but he isn't able to get to him. Truex Jr. goes to Gordon's inside, coming off turn 4. Tony Stewart will win the 2016 Daytona 500, and in this timeline would be his second Daytona 500 as he won it back in 2009. Tony Stewart's your winner, Jeff Gordon second, Martin Truex Jr. third, AJ Allmendinger fourth, David Reagan fifth, Elliott Sadler in sixth, Justin Allgaier seventh, Carl Edwards eighth, and Dakota Armstrong ninth. All 3 HScott cars finishing in the top 10, and finishing in 10th is Michael Annett. And now let's move on to the highlights for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series season for 2016. We got to see our share of first-time winners in 2016, starting with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. getting his first win at Las Vegas, in which he would go on to win the second Las Vegas race and the second Texas race. Regan Smith also got his first career win, and Tommy Baldwin Racing's first win as well at the first Pocono race, and Michael Annett got his first career win and JD Motorsports' first win at the Coke Zero 400 at Daytona. Early on in the season, Stewart-Haas Racing looked like the team to beat. The team on its own won the first 5 races of the season, with Tony Stewart winning the Daytona 500, Kevin Harvick winning 3 of those races, and as previously mentioned, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. winning at Las Vegas. Chase Elliott made his first Sprint Cup start at the first Texas race, and he was impressive off the bat, starting in second and having a good run all race long. This was his first of 5 starts for the 2016 season to prepare him for next season. On the final lap of the first Kansas race, Jimmie Johnson was able to get around Kevin Harvick at the last second to win the race at Kansas. For once, Kevin Harvick was not the closer, Jimmie Johnson was. At the Brickyard 400, as Carl Edwards was coming to take the white flag, a huge pileup occurs coming off of turn 4 when Jimmie Johnson and Jeff Gordon got together, but watch David Ragan and Josh Wise both go for wild rides. Luckily, everyone was okay, though David Ragan had to be taken to a local hospital that night. He was checked out and he was okay for the next race. Jeff Gordon had a struggling second half to the season and was on the bubble of missing the chase. At the cutoff race at Richmond, Jeff Gordon was running in the top 10 when suddenly he blew an engine, and because of that, he will miss the chase. Very, very heartbreaking for a lot of Jeff Gordon fans and for Jeff Gordon himself, as he was looking to compete for one last championship run in his final season. But it wasn't all doom and gloom for Jeff Gordon, as he went on to have a dominating race and go on to win the inaugural Sprint Cup race at the Charlotte Roval. I think this is a rather good way to send off your career. This would also be the final career Cup Series win for Jeff Gordon. The Fall Talladega race looked to be a massive wreck fest. There were smaller incidents early in the race, but then near the halfway point, a massive big one took out most of the field. There were a lot of wrecked race cars, and this resulted in about just 7 cars finishing this race, in which was won by Kyle Larson. As for the championship for at Homestead, it came down to Kurt Busch, Denny Hamlin, Jimmie Johnson, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And in a surprising turn of events, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had the fastest car at Homestead, and in what has been a great turnaround season, the 2016 Sprint Cup Series champion is Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and I don't think anyone was expecting this. He moved from the Roush Fenway split and was signed on by Tony Stewart, in which Tony Stewart knew that he made the right decision. It seems now that Stenhouse has reached his full potential, gaining 3 wins in the season and 2 of them in which they counted the most. That and the strong car at Homestead, I'm sure we may be seeing a lot more success out of him in the coming seasons. And here are the top 10 in standings and a list of all the winners from the 2016 Sprint Cup Series season. And that will do it for the 2016 season in general, for a divided ending. Stock car racing has changed completely. There are still a lot of questions left to be answered, and now both circuits want to get off on the right foot. How do you think ARCA is going to do with their new look? How is NASCAR going to do losing so much star power? Who's going to lead the future for both of these circuits? What kind of changes could be coming in future years? What's up next in 2017? Well, you'll see that in a future video here soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. This video did take a while, but I hope you all really enjoyed this. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a terrific New Year's. I'm Sonicals831, and I will see you in the next video.